In today's show, we're talking Orlando Magic, a season preview with Philip Rossman-Reich of the Locked On Magic podcast. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Yesterday, we did the Milwaukee Bucks. Today, it's the Orlando Magic. We're going to have two shows coming a day for the next couple of weeks. So we're going to talk Magic today. We're going to be looking at a bunch of questions that we have for this Magic team. So we might as well bring in the host of the Locked On Magic podcast. It's Philip Rossman-Reich. Phil, welcome back to the show.
I'm glad to be back, Josh. It's my favorite call of the year every year.
We do this every year. We have done it for many, many years now. I think since basically Locked On started, 2016, I think is when we started doing this. So it has been it's been a long time, and it's good to have you here because this Magic team is in a bit of a different situation than it's been in previous years. Other years they've been fringe playoff teams, 7, 8 seeds, and then in the rebuilding years, and now we're coming out of that rebuilding era, I guess, and that's one of the things we're going to touch on in today's show. But we're heading into an exciting period for Orlando Magic basketball. We're just going to cover some of the basics here early on. Let's just have a look at the changes of the roster. There's not many changes they made, Phil. They bring in Anthony Black and Jett Howard through the draft. They signed Joe Ingles, they waived Bol, and then Jay Scrubb and Michael Carter-Williams were two players who played for the Magic last season, and they're no longer there. So very clearly, that's a big upgrade, even though they only made a few moves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, the one, I mean, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, but the one thing that really cost the Magic throughout last year was they just had so many injuries early in the season and depth. And look, I'm a big believer that in the NBA, there's talent everywhere. What truly defines whether a team can be successful or not is whether they have guys in the right roles. And when your depth is constantly strained and you don't have a bench that can kind of sustain you and help you weather some of the storms that are inevitable in an 82-game season, that's where you see teams like really crash in the standings. That's where you see some teams rise in the standings. And so, you know, I think what the Magic did this offseason, they didn't change a lot, obviously. And you know, there's definitely reasons for that. But they feel like they're very deep. Like we'll talk about this very, very shortly, I'm sure, but there's going to be some players on this team that you would expect to play that are probably not going to play as much as you think.
Yeah, there is a crunch, right? There is a crunch of players on this team that we are going to have to get into, but we'll cover some of the basics we need to. Let's talk about, I don't know how much we're going to have to talk about this guy this season, but Jonathan Isaac had another surgery at the end of last season on his groin. Now, we are always going to be we're always going to be fraught with danger to suggest, John, he's going to be ready. He's going to be ready for training camp because, we've said that for 3 years in a row and it's never happened. And injuries that take 12 months, take 36 months to return from. But do we believe that Jonathan Isaac is going to be healthy for training camp?
All indications are that he will be. When he had the surgery back in March or April, whenever it was described as minor surgery, which, you know, does minor surgery actually exist when he has the injury history that he has? I don't know. But he's come out publicly and he's spoken, and some of the outlets that he speaks to, I don't typically like to frequent, but he has spoken publicly that he expects to be ready for training camp. It certainly sounds like he's going to be ready for camp, and he's played now, so at least we have 11 games of him playing to say like, okay, he can still play basketball, whether he'll be under any type of restriction, whether there'll be a minute restriction, whether there'll be a back-to-back restriction. We don't really know what the plan is with him, considering he's played 11 games now in 3 seasons, but all indications are he is going to be good to go for camp. And if you watched him play in the limited minutes that he had last year, he can still make a very big impact on this team.
Yeah, he looked sort of like the same guy in those limited minutes. Now, obviously, in those limited minutes, he knew that he was playing limited minutes, so he was going really hard at certain areas, didn't worry about fouls, didn't have to worry about any of that, and the shot wasn't, all these numbers and percentages were either massively high or massively low. They hadn't stabilized, which is fine. But you talk about limited minutes, I think he's going to be limited in terms of, well, he's just not going to be a starter on this team. So there's an inherent limit put on his role there because he's not going to play over Franz Wagner and he's not going to play over Paolo Banchero. So he's going to, at absolute best, be the sixth man on this team, I would guess. I know there'll definitely be someone who's watching this who'll advocate for, no, let's push Franz down to the 2, and then he can start there. But like we saw Franz at the 2 at times last season, and Phil, you reference those injuries. It didn't go particularly well when you had to push those guys when every guard on the roster was basically injured. Yeah.
I mean, look, it was good for experimenting, and I do suspect that if Isaac is able to sustain some health and play consistent minutes, I do kind of suspect that the Magic will try smaller lineups. Now, like the Golden State Warriors death lineup, everyone was like, oh, they should run that all the time. It's like, no, they really only run it for like 2 minutes at a time at the end of halves to kind of, flip momentum against bench units. It wasn't, until the playoffs, maybe when the matchup really called for it, that wasn't the lineup that they turned to. So I do think it's possible that we do see lineups where Isaac Banchero and Wagner are all together. In fact, Isaac and Banchero did not play a single minute together last year. And again, limited minutes with Jonathan Isaac. So we don't know how those two interact with each other. And so it is something worth exploring. And whether that means they go big and push Franz to the 2, or they go small and push Isaac or Paolo to the 5, there's flexibility to try different things and try some different things. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to whether Jonathan Isaac's healthy. You don't want to push him to do things that he's uncomfortable with if you're not sure how long you're going to have him, or you're not sure if he can withstand, playing against the center for 2-3 minutes, if that's what has to happen. And so I think they'll continue to be very cautious and keep things very simple with him, at least early on.
Yeah, I think that the pressure point there, I guess, is like he could just take some of Mo Wagner's backup center minutes and go in that smaller lineup versus, because we're going to get into it, but there is a plethora of guards on this team that need minutes, and we need to see how it's all going to work out. So I think it is more likely they go small rather than big, because Mo Wagner seems a lot more replaceable than the bench guards or the starting guards or the high draft pick guards that they've invested in, which is a whole another topic, which we are going to get into in a second. But I think before we do that, I might tell you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season is about to kick off. In fact, it already has. And FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long, because right now when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. So whatever team that you pick to win the Super Bowl, every time that they get a regular season victory, you get some bonus bets back for it. And with those bonus bets, you can use it on spreads, you can use it on totals, straight up winners, money line, you can use it on player props, you can use it on over-unders, you can use it on futures, whatever it is you want, you can do that. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. I'm going to put some, if I had the ability to go to FanDuel, because I'm in Australia, I'd be going and having a look at the Miami Dolphins futures, because, at some point we've got to win something. Hopefully. Are you a Dolphins fan, Phil? I know, or are you more Tampa?
I flip between the Bucks and the Jaguars, but my mom is a big Dolphins fan.
Yeah, well, she knows the pain of winning one playoff game in 30 years or whatever it is. It has not been particularly good, but maybe it's this year. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, Phil, there will be people who don't like this, but I don't know if I agree. I think I agree, but the starting 5.
The depth chart is fun.
Yeah,
let me just.
They've got a lot of young guards, right? But the thing that no one's going to argue that Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter are going to start. That is locked in. That is 100% happening. There is no debate about that. I think 90% of people will tell you that Markelle Fultz will be the starting point guard. Again, no problem with that. It's the Gary Harris position that people are going to have concerns with, because they have millions of young guards. They've got 3 other guards on rookie contracts, 2 of them top 6 picks in the last 3 drafts. Yet Harris is penciled in as a starter, and now I know the reason you're going to say you've put him there, but let's get it out there. Let's say it out loud.
So the reason Gary Harris is there is that the team needs shooters. They don't have a lot of shooting. Markelle Fultz is still a non-shooter. Franz Wagner is a decent shooter. Paolo Banchero is a better shooter than his numbers show. He had a 1 for 32 February, which while he was dealing with a nerve issue. When you take that 1 for 32 February out, he was 33.3% from beyond the arc, which is okay, not great. And then Wendell Carter's Wendell Carter. He's your center. So they obviously need some shooting, and their options off the bench with shooters are, again, Cole Anthony or Jett Howard. Anthony Black's not a shooter. Jalen Suggs had a nice spurt at the end of the season, but he's not quite a shooter yet. So to me, when I look at the starting lineup, and the starting line, this 5 was the Magic's most used lineup last year for a team that was, 29 and 28 when Markelle Fultz was healthy after December 7th. They were plus 0.8 points per 100 possessions with the starting lineup. So the starting lineup had success. It was consistent, and with a young team, consistency matters. Now, I will agree with you that that I have Harris penciled in, but to me, really, it's not necessarily his job to lose. It's Jalen Suggs' job to gain. Suggs, after the All-Star break last year, averaged, I think, 10, 11 points per game, shot 36% from beyond the arc. That's a 22-game sample, so it's not insignificant. But if Jalen Suggs is playing more like that version of Jalen Suggs, then all of a sudden the question at shooting guard becomes a little bit different. Now you have maybe a more reliable shooter in Suggs. You have another guy who is a really disruptive defender, and you can really kind of hang your hat on being like, hey, we got all this length, we got all these defensive players, we can be a really suffocating defensive team, and this can be something we can grow from. At the end of the day, the Magic just need to be able to score enough points. That's still the big issue, and some of it is, yes, Paolo Banchero was an inefficient rookie. All those arguments that people had for why he shouldn't win Rookie of the Year, those were fair criticisms of him. Now, that obviously didn't keep him from winning Rookie of the Year, nor should it have, because of the production he was having. But all those were fair points, and that's an area where Paolo has to get better at. Everyone else has to find ways to become more effective offensively. And to me, that's why I still lean toward Gary Harris, because he gives you some floor spacing. He's not going to need the ball in his hands to be successful. He can be an outlet as a shooter. He'll space the floor a little bit. But if Suggs is a decent enough shooter, then that question's going to get raised again. And so I would care. This is my starting 5 at the moment. But I think it's Jalen Suggs' spot to gain if he can. And if he can't, well, then come other questions about Jalen Suggs and where he fits into the bigger picture for the team.
Yeah, I agree. Like he needs to be able to win it in year 3. I think he's already proven himself to be, if not elite, but pretty close to elite as a defender. The passing is solid. He has some moments as a shooter, but it waxes and wanes. And yeah, Harris, if he starts, he's not playing 30 minutes. He might play 22 minutes or 23 minutes or whatever, but just he's pairing out there with those other guys to open up the lane so that Fultz can drive and so Paolo can drive is important in those minutes that he's out there versus having him out there with a bench group where it sort of wastes his shooting ability. So I do understand that, and it's about mixing and matching those combinations. But yeah, I think that to me the only realistic suitor for that position is Suggs. I don't really think anyone else is in line to be in the opening night starting 5 apart from Suggs or Harris. And we've seen Jamal Mosley over 2 years really tend to lean towards Harris early in the season, and then Harris has an inevitable injury that knocks him out, and then Suggs takes over, then he has an inevitable injury, and then Harris takes back over, and it sort of goes back and forth that way. But that takes us to the rest of your projected rotation, and some of those names are there. We've got Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, Anthony Black, and Mo Wagner. And there are 3 players in that group who you could consider, and you probably should consider, as point guards. Anthony, Suggs, and Black. Now, Suggs is a bit bigger. He can play, he can guard at 2s and 3s as well. Cole Anthony's probably more of a shooting guard. I want to focus a little bit here on, we talked Suggs already and Isaac. I want to talk Anthony and Black a little bit here. Cole Anthony's a guy that I think is getting maybe a little underrated in some circles. He has some inefficiency problems, but some of his advanced stats were pretty strong last season. And I do think that he is in a situation where it's not going to happen in Orlando, but there is, I think there might be a starting guard in there in Cole, but I don't think this team views him that way. Is that accurate, Phil?
I think that is accurate. And look, the biggest debate left for this offseason for the Orlando Magic is whether to try and take care of Cole Anthony with an extension before restricted free agency. It doesn't feel like Cole Anthony wants that taken care of. He wants to bet on himself, maximize his contract, obviously, next summer. And he's said it, Cole Anthony, there's no bigger cheerleader for everyone on this team than Cole Anthony. Yeah. But Cole Anthony has said it himself. He believes he's a starter in the NBA. And look, he started for a good chunk of the first 2 seasons of his career. Last year, he was almost exclusively coming off the bench. And, he definitely wants to start. He wants that prestige. He wants that responsibility. But he really stepped into that 6th man role, especially after the All-Star break. He really had the efficiency really jumped up. He really seemed to find his spark at that moment. And a lot of, a lot of these things for this team kind of came together in small ways after the All-Star break. But Anthony believes he can be a starter. And that's going to be the kind of the ultimate question for the Magic and for Anthony is, does the role of the Magic have available for Anthony? Does that fit his vision of himself and what he believes he can do? He will do the 6th man role. The Magic will probably play him the most minutes of anyone off the bench, because like you said, Gary Harris probably only going to play around 20, 24 minutes a game. Markelle Fultz is probably going to be in the high 20s. I don't think he'll hit 30 minutes per game. There's going to be inevitable injuries to players on this roster, and the Magic, I think, are certainly better situated to handle those injuries than they were last year. But Anthony is going to be someone that the team relies on to kind of carry that second unit, whether that's on the ball or off the ball, or a little bit of both, honestly, and provide some production and scoring and shooting.
We'll get into Anthony Black in a second, but you sent me through this rotation, and you had Jonathan Isaac / Joe Ingles. I deliberately left Joe Ingles off that little graphic because I wanted to keep it at 10, but I also wanted to just highlight that this is the problem with trying to work out this team. Now, we know that Isaac is going to miss some time at some point, so Ingles will get in that rotation, but there's a one-man too many problem with this team, or probably 2, because Jet Howard's not even in this mix also.
Not in there, yeah.
So Jet Howard and Joe Ingles, 2 of the guys they acquired, out of the 3 players they acquired in the offseason, aren't in that rotation. Okay, so that's weird, right? That's a little bit weird to pay that money to Ingles. And look, again, you look at it and go, well, okay, is Isaac just the permanent backup center? Like, where does Joe fit? They're not going to run 11 guys every night, so somebody is going to miss out. Is there a trade coming, do you think, whether it is Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, who are probably the 2 prime candidates I would expect? Is there a trade that could happen before camp?
I mean, I always like to describe it this way. My favorite meme to explain this is there's a meme that goes around to explain the difference between a tropical storm warning and a tropical storm watch. A tropical storm watch is, and it uses tacos to do this. A storm watch occurs when all the conditions are present for a storm to occur. So you have all the ingredients for your taco to make. A storm warning is when you are eating the tacos. And it very much feels like all the conditions are present for a trade to take place. I agree completely. Depth is a really good thing for a young team. And I think that, like Gary Harris, the Magic are probably going to play Joe Ingles a little bit more toward the beginning of the season. And then, if things aren't working out, or depending on injuries, or depending on what the team needs at any given moment, his minutes may tail off. And then all of a sudden he becomes an $11 million trade piece because he's got a team option on the second year of his deal toward the trade deadline. So, whether it's Joe Ingles, whether it's Cole Anthony, it could be Jalen Suggs. Jonathan Isaac's contract next year is fully non-guaranteed. So he is a free $17 million if someone's looking to cut salary to avoid the second apron or avoid any tax penalties. Markelle Fultz is set to be a free agent next summer as well. That's $17 million you can clear off your books too. Or to re-sign if Fultz has a really strong year. The Magic have good problems to have in training camp. There's gonna be a lot of internal competition. They're rookies. They've all said it. The management said it. Coaches have said it. Rookies aren't going to be guaranteed playing time for this team. There aren't 30 minutes to gift to Anthony Black or to Jet Howard. You mentioned Gary Harris. If Gary Harris has an injury, that could be a spot where Jet Howard actually gets some minutes in kind of a Spursy way to keep the rest of the rotation intact. A little bit. There are options, and a lot of it's going to get earned in training camp. And whoever loses some of these battles, or if the veteran wins that battle, that veteran could be shipped out toward the end of the year, or that could be used to help combine guys to make a serious upgrade to help the postseason chase at the end of the season, or to set up next offseason or during the offseason when the Magic might be ready to push some more chips into the middle of the table.
That is a great segue into Anthony Black, because there are people who look at it and go, well, he's awesome. I look, honestly, I didn't like to pick at number 6. I had Anthony Black outside my top 10. I just think that there is, for the lack of shooting, There's no absolute outlier skill that offsets it like there is for Josh Giddey, like there is for Amen Thompson or Rasad Thompson. I just think that he's good, but that's might become too much of a problem. And after that first game in Summer League where he shot 70%, like we saw those problems exist. And there are people who think, well, he's just going to jump in and start straight away. What's your expectation for Anthony Black in terms of playing time? Because I'm doing my projections here. I can't see him hitting 20 minutes a night.
Yeah, I mean, I got kind of criticized for this. I actually kind of think Jet Howard might have a better rookie year because his skills are more translatable to, what the Magic need until the Magic kind of clean up their guard situation. At this point, Anthony Black feels like a more point guard oriented and bigger version of Jalen Suggs. And so honestly, we kind of talked about this a little bit. If Jalen Suggs can't earn the starting spot, I almost think that, maybe Anthony Black takes Jalen Suggs' spot in the rotation. The Magic have been pretty open that they may consider playing Anthony Black at the 3 a little bit. They believe he can play all three kind of perimeter positions. But yeah, there wasn't a clean fit for the Magic in this draft. So, it seems like no matter who the Magic were going to take at 6, unless Asar Thompson fell to them, there wasn't going to be a perfect guy. Taylor Hendricks might have fit because they may have needed another power forward to cover for Jonathan Isaac, maybe someone who could moonlight a little bit at the 5. But that would have been a little bit of a reach too. There wasn't just this 100% perfect fit in the draft. And so the Magic did what they usually do. And they took the longest player and probably the most talented player, which, honestly at number 6 at that high in the draft, I'm usually for just take the best player available. You'll figure it out later. But Black has a lot of work to do. His shot is really concerning. He said in a vlog that he did that he had some ankle issues during Summer League, so the Magic weren't super concerned about his lack of explosion. I really did love the way that he controlled the tempo and pace of the game. So I think that the Magic could bring him in bench units, play Cole Anthony off the ball a little bit more, or he might be a little bit more effective, and have Black kind of run point a little bit more. But I think for both rookies, for both Anthony Black and Jet Howard, it's going to be an up and down run. They'll have their really good moments. They may have moments where they're both completely out of the rotation. And it's going to be a really difficult thing for Jamal Mosley to manage because kind of hanging in the background here, which we haven't mentioned so far, the Magic, I think, do believe they're going to make the play-in tournament next year. I think Magic fans certainly expect them to at least make the play-in tournament next season. They were the last team eliminated in the Eastern Conference playoff picture last year during the regular season. They believe they have the talent to make the postseason. The players are all openly talking about it if management won't. And so there's going to be at least a little bit of pressure to win, which the Magic haven't necessarily had for the last couple of years.
Yeah, there is. Absolutely. There is. They should be looking to make the play-in, and I think they've got a good chance of it. Let's go to the young players, and this is everyone who's under age, or 23 and under. So it's Paolo, it's Franz, Suggs, Black, Howard, and Caleb Houston. But I do want to talk about Paolo because there was a little bit of consternation in the fantasy basketball community about Paolo Banchero. Some people seem to think that he's not a valuable fantasy player and he's not even a draftable guy because of just how bad his percentages are. They're so dreadful.
Rookies are bad, folks.
Yeah,
rookies are bad.
This is what happens, right? So rookies just struggle a lot. Now, Paolo had some issues with efficiency coming out of college. We knew that there'd be some of those problems. You highlighted that nerve issue, which torpedoed his entire February, basically, in terms of shooting. I'm expecting very, very significant increases in field goal and three-point percentage. Free throws, who knows, right? Maybe, maybe not. That might improve, but we've seen guys who the player he's most commonly compared to,
he's going to get there.
Yeah, if he gets to 75, 76, that's all well and good. I'm expecting really big things from Paolo Banchero still. I think that he was far and away the rookie of the year, and I'm just not worried about that efficiency stuff from last season. There are people, he's just a chucker and put up these numbers on a bad team. How do you respond to that? How, in watching that, do you have concerns that he's just going to be a consistently inefficient player?
I don't think he's going to be a consistently inefficient player, but when you look at, he is attempting to be a star, and star players, by and large, not all of them, but by and large, they're allowed to be inefficient. When you draft a star player, when you bring a star player in, they're taking the bad shots. They're taking certain amount of shots that are not good shots, because that's just the nature of being a star player. Like, he is going to take a lot of mid-range jump shots. That is the provenance of the stars. And that means, is he ever going to shoot 47, 48%? Probably not. He's not going to be Kevin Durant, although I think there are some parallels between. You think he will? Okay, there you go.
Not this year. I think that when you look at these star players, right, that by year 5, there's no reason he can't be hitting 59, 60% true shooting, right? He had true shooting of 53 last season.
Percentage was 53, yeah. And look, the big thing for Paolo is, the big thing that really was like, oh, this kid is something different, was he got to the line 7-8 times a night.
Yeah,
that's
huge.
I looked it up. In Magic history, there are only 4 players who have averaged more than five free throw attempts per game. I think it's Shaq. It's like Shaq and Dwight have 6 or 7. All 4 of Shaq's seasons, like 6 or 7 Dwight seasons. Tracy McGrady and Steve Francis. Like, Paolo is even in Magic history, in the elite group of attackers and scorers. And so, yes, the guy had a 27% usage rate last year. The Magic wanted him to make mistakes. Like, last year was the year to give him the ball and say, hey, figure out how to score. Like, we're going to try and put you in good positions, but you need to figure out how to score. You need to figure out how to face this double team. And he's got to face more double teams this year than he did last year. So it's probably, if you're looking for Paolo as a fantasy option, there's probably going to be some ups and downs with his efficiency. Don't draft him for his efficiency. You're drafting him for his raw scoring number, his ability to get to the line, and that might be it. Maybe he'll increase his rebounding a little bit this year, which is something I've been really focused on as well as his efficiency, is saying like, hey, let's get that rebounding number up a little bit. Wendell can't do it all by himself. But Paolo is playing like a star, and you're allowed to do certain things when you are the star player of the team. And one of those is you're going to take a lot of shots, and they may not be good shots all the time.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Like, the indicators of what he was able to do suggest to me that, 60 true shooting, 25, 9 and 5 in 4 years, he's absolutely on the cards. And it's going to be, look, if you're 53 true shooting, I think 55, 56 this season is realistic. And I just think it's going to improve over the next 3-4 years.
Even if he averaged 20 points per game last year.
Yep.
Even if he shoots the 33.3% from 3 that I said he shot, taking out the February stuff, that's another that may be another 1.5 threes per game or something like that. That's 4 or 5 points. That gets him to 20 to 23, 24 points.
Yeah, it's I talk about this all the time with fantasy, is that percentages are such a multiplier, in that your percentages count as a category, but they also increase your scoring. So if everything else stays the same and you just increase your percentage by 2 percentage points, well, there's an extra 1.5, 2 points right there. It just adds on just because you just made that extra shot. So that's always the big indicator. If you shoot poorly, it drops everything down and you look terrible. If you shoot well, you look amazing. And that's the thing I think is going to happen with Paolo. I was going to talk Franz now, but we'll talk about him a little bit later. But I want to talk this part of the Magic. Is this it now? They've got their core. Are they all in? There's no tanking for picks. There's no, well, we're rebuilding still. It's like, no, we need to be play-in. We need to be playoffs perhaps this season. This is it. This is our group. Bang, straight ahead.
If they're not all in now, they're the step before all in, is how I would describe it. I think what the Magic's goals are this year is they're going to just finally figure out what they have and what they need to move forward. So, like, my expectation is they make the play-in tournament. I believe this is a play-in team, at the very least. I don't want to limit them to that, but I believe this is a postseason team. I believe they will be playing after the regular season, whether that is in the first playing game, in the big playing game, in the regular playoffs. I don't know yet, because we just don't know how Paolo is going to improve. The goal this season is to let Paolo and Franz continue to improve, to get into these high pressure situations, and then figure out which players thrive in the playoff spotlight and which players maybe don't quite work around this group. Between Paolo and Franz, the Magic have 2 pillars of their franchise, of their future. Like, those guys are the guys they want to build around. And so this season's figuring out what works around them. What is going to make those guys better, and what do we need when we're ready to compete in a major playoff series. I don't want to say the Magic are all in, because I don't expect them to make any win now moves at the trade deadline or anything like that. I think they'll still work to keep their financial flexibility and be able to do anything that they want. But by next summer, I do expect that the Magic will be ready to make some bigger moves to try and push themselves up the Eastern Conference standings and up the Eastern Conference ladder.
I've projected out every team's win total at the moment. I'll adjust it if other trades happen, but I do have the Magic tied for the 9th seed in the East, so that would be that play-in area that we're talking about there. All right, here's a question for you, which brings us to where I wanted to talk about Franz Wagner. Who do you think this team's best player is in 2025? So heading it at the end of the 24-25 season, yeah.
I think so. This is like the great debate among Magic fans. I would argue Franz Wagner is the best player on the Magic right now.
100%. That is 100% accurate. Like, he is clearly the best player on this team at the moment.
He's like the complaint that he doesn't get the ball enough. Like, he still takes the second most shots on the team, but he does not get the ball enough. Like, good things happen when the ball's in his hands.
Yep.
And you will see that with Team Germany in the World Cup as well. You will not see that with Paolo with Team USA in the World Cup.
No, you won't.
Not playing the start. He is not playing the starting role, which is going to be very interesting to watch. By 2025, I expect Paolo Banchero to be the best player on the team. His rise and what he was able to show his rookie year were all just so impressive. It's going to take some time to get the efficiency down and to just understand, like I was like watching like video of like how Jason Tatum works out and how Kevin Durant works out and some of the video of Paolo working out with those guys that's been released. And with those players specifically, you can just tell how efficient they are getting to their spots. There is very little wasted movement. There's no wasted dribbles. That's the stuff Paolo's learning right now. And so, like, it takes a while to learn how to do that at the NBA level. It takes 2-3 years, and he's still going to be very productive. He's still going to score a lot of points, but he's not going to be at that level. By that 3rd year, as we're getting ready to talk about the max extension he's inevitably going to get, he should be at that level. And so by the end of the 2025 or by the end of the 2025 season, I do suspect that Paolo will be the best player on this team and the kind of guy that the Magic believe can lead them out of the first round and make deep playoff runs with.
Yeah, I agree. Franz is clearly the best player at the moment, and I do think that by the end of Paolo's 3rd year, which will be the end of Franz's 4th year, that Paolo will be that guy. And I agree. So let's bang out 3 questions here: breakout candidate, regression candidate, and trade candidate. Who's a breakout guy on this team?
We have not talked enough about Markelle Fultz.
Fair enough. Yep.
The easy answer would be Jalen Suggs, but people are not talking about Markelle Fultz. After the All-Star break, and I know I've said a lot after the All-Star break, and the Magic were 10-13 after the All-Star break, and so I like to throw out those 3 losses at the end of the season when they were eliminated from playoffs, and they benched all their guys, but that's either here or there. But after the All-Star break is really important for Markelle Fultz because usually recovering from an ACL injury, it takes you a full year to get back on the court and then a full year to kind of get back to where you were. He came back last year after the All-Star break. So after the All-Star break was a full year. He averaged, I think, 16 points per game, like 5 or 6 assists per game, shot good efficiency off the bounce, like 63% at the rim. Yeah. This was a guy that looked, he had some of those crazy dunks that we saw from Washington. He started to show what made him the number 1 pick. Now, is the shooting there completely? No. Does he still turn the ball over? Like I would describe him as sometimes getting a little lazy, just with his attention to detail. But Markelle Fultz is not a guy people are talking about. If there's a reason why this Magic team could be like last year's Cleveland Cavaliers or even last year's New York Knicks, it's because Markelle Fultz comes out and is averaging 15, 16, 17 points per game on good efficiency, passing the ball at a high rate, maybe like a 7-2, 8-2 assist to turnover ratio. He is very, very capable of doing that. He was the number 1 pick for a reason and the clear-cut number 1 pick for a reason, and he's finally healthy enough, perhaps, knock on wood, to show that now that he's hopefully going to have a fully healthy summer to kind of keep building on the success at the end of the season.
We recorded this show and then he went out and broke his toe in training camp last year. So fingers crossed, nothing like that happens here. What about on the other side of things? I don't really know who is a regression candidate. Like, this team is all relatively young. Most of them are ascending. Like, you could say, I guess, Joe Ingles, but he already has regressed even before his ACL. Is there anyone you look at and go, oh, I'm a little worried about where things might be headed?
Jalen Suggs worries me a little bit, and I know that's not much of a regression, and we talked a little bit about him, but
it's probably a lack of progression more for Suggs.
Lack of progress more than a regression. Yeah. Well, like, he has his post All-Star shooting and is shooting for the rest of his career. If he's shooting like the rest of his career, that's probably going to be a problem. If he can't stay healthy, that's going to be a continued problem. If he plays like he did after the All-Star break, it feels like a coin flip with Jalen Suggs. So let me give another answer then. Wendell Carter concerns me a little bit. It's not that I think he's going to necessarily regress. What did he average last year? Like 14, 15 points per game,
Sounds
like 8
right,
rebounds per game. He was dealing with a plantar fascia issue all season long from like December to the end of the season. He will never admit it, but it clearly slowed him down. So it would not surprise me if Wendell Carter had a really strong season. Certainly I would expect his rebounds to go up, but just from an overall standpoint, I have always had this big question about Wendell Carter, whether he is the kind of center that can buoy you in the playoffs. He's a good defender, good interior defender, a decent shot blocker, but he's not like your typical above the rim shot blocker. He's going to get you maybe a block and a half a game. If he could get that to 2, then I'd feel a lot better. On top of this, he's never played more than 65 games in any season in his career. And so injuries are always a big concern. I know that he's spoken about that publicly as well this summer, where he's really trying hard to make sure his body is ready for the season. And I think, if there's a weak spot for the Magic, it's relying on Mo Wagner and Goga Bitadze to be the backup center options. I like them both. I don't like them both as the backup for Wendell Carter, especially when one might have to start 15 to 20 games next season. Mo Wagner certainly a regression candidate too. He had a really strong season last year, and who knows what's going to happen with him. Like him and Goga Bitadze were kind of flipping back and forth as the backup center toward the end of last season for good reason. So they gave him a lot of money, so I expect him to play. But it's hard to find a regression candidate because just so many guys are just kind of either progressing naturally as rookies do, or just huge question marks and coin flips that could go either way.
We already talked about this a little bit, but which one singular player is the most likely to be traded, do you think?
I kind of think it's going to be Gary Harris. Just again, to clear up that backcourt clutter, if Jalen Suggs has earned that starting spot or is like bursting for more minutes, or even Anthony Black is bursting for more minutes, or Jet Howard is in that case. Gary Harris just seems like the extra guy. I know the Magic need the veterans. They need some older guys on the team, but I get the sense that the Magic aren't going to bring him back next year. And so maybe that actually makes him less likely to be traded because, people don't value expiring contracts anymore. But Gary Harris seems like the odd man out, and it feels inevitable. I'll put in a line for Cole Anthony here too, I guess. Just because, Cole Anthony, I think, expects to start. He's probably going to ask for a salary in the $20 million range. I think the Magic probably want to get him at 15 to 18. They may end up at 20 anyway, but if Cole Anthony has a really breakout season and it looks like he's going to get more than $20 million a year, even with the cap going up the way it's expected, maybe this is a time to cash that chip on Cole Anthony and free up that space for Anthony Black and Jet Howard to play.
I agree with all that. Now let's get to our win total projections. Last season, 34 and 48. They were minus 2.4 net rating, which was 24th in the NBA, and we both have sizable jumps. FanDuel Sportsbook, Phil, the great FanDuel Sportsbook, has their over-under set at 36.5. We've both gone over, and in what is going to be a tradition that the host of the team podcast is going to be higher than me, you went with 40, 42. I actually went 39, 43. So we're actually not that far off in terms of the win total. That's not quite 500. I think we've sort of all talked about our expectations for this team and where they sit, and that's where it is. We expect them to push towards 500 and to be in that play-in mix. Now, it's time for a game, Phil. And I told you we were going to play this game at the start, and you were pumped. You were, let's go. I'm so excited about this.
Let's do it.
We're playing the Griddy. We are doing Orlando Magic. There, you can see your teams. I've revealed them to you there. So, again, I'll just explain it to you. I've explained it to the listeners yesterday, but we can't do rarity scores because it's only you doing it. But what I have done is developed a formula that you get a score based on the players' games played for either of the two teams. So, I've gone through and put all their games played, all the players, right? So if someone's played one game for one team and 400 for the other, knowing that they played that one game for one team, that gives you a really good score. So it's based on the lowest games played for either team, and then they're all ranked within that thing to get a score. Now, across these 6 categories, Kane for the Bucks yesterday got a score of 218. So that's what okay. You've got to beat. So where do you want to start? Where on the board are we going to start things off here, Phil?
Before we start, am I limited in my guesses? So if I get one wrong, do I lose that spot?
You're out. Yes, you're out. Yep. It's
I'm not.
we're playing immaculate grid rules here.
Okay. So I'm iffy. I'm gonna start with Orlando, Brooklyn, because I have an iffy one that I'm not gonna guess, because I'm pretty sure he played for them, but for very, very few games. I'm not 100% sure. For Brooklyn, Orlando. Hold on. Now I'm second guessing myself. Let's start with Dallas, Orlando. Give me Dennis Scott for the Dallas Orlando square. I know Dennis Scott played one season in Dallas, or one season in Dallas, like 60, 70 games, something like that.
He did play around that. He played 52 games. 52 games for Dallas. Unfortunately, that is not a particularly strong score for you.
Okay.
Which that's all right. You can still beat
Courtney
Kane.
Lee Courtney Lee was probably going to be stronger. Courtney Lee could fill that whole first row.
Well, that's true. I forgot about Courtney Lee. Dennis Scott gives you a 40.8. Now, the highest score for each category is 100. The lowest score is 1. You got a 40.8 there. He played 52 games for Dallas in that season. So where are we going next?
Give me the Boston square. We're going to take Jameer Nelson.
Ooh, Jameer Nelson. That's wow. Now that's an absolute cracker. I love that one.
One of my favorite locker room stories was I was running quotes for the AP in the Celtics locker room, and Jameer Nelson was cracking Gerald Wallace for the Magic beating the Bobcats in the 2010 first round.
That is 1.64 for Jameer Nelson. Jameer Nelson played 6 games for Boston. Wow. That is... Phil, you're back on track now. You've redeemed yourself after Dennis Scott. That is a fantastic score.
I feel like I got to do the really obscure one that I'm thinking of for Brooklyn.
Okay, let's take the risk. What are we?
I got to take the risk. Ronnie Cycli.
Oh, Phil. Yes, we're here. Ronnie Cycli did play that one. Wow, that is amazing.
DJ Ronnie.
That is a score of an 8.5 there for DJ Ronnie Cycli. He played 18 games for Brooklyn. I did not know that he played 18 games for Brooklyn or New Jersey as it was back in the day.
That was a trade that nearly got canceled. The Magic traded for David Benoit. If I'm not mistaken.
Wow, David Benoit. We've got the Suns, we've got the Clippers, and then the last one is averaged 8 rebounds per game while a member of the Magic in a single season. That's what that last category is.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Let me clarify something. Is this game does games with the Magic matter, or games with the team that they're playing with matter? Because that influences my Suns.
Either whatever the lowest one is. So if they're all sorted by what the lowest is. So they might have played 400 for the Magic and then 1 for another team, or they might have played 1 for the Magic and 400. They would both still count as one game.
Okay. So for my Sun square then.
Okay.
Give me the legendary Judd Buechler.
Wow. I feel like Judd Buechler is just a great... Well, that's a fantastic score. He played 6 games for Phoenix. He's a great answer for a few of these.
He only played 6 games for Phoenix. Wow. I thought the Magic were the low end of that.
No. He played 6 for Phoenix. I'm just going to have a look at his overall. He played 60 for Orlando and 6 for Phoenix. That is a... Wow, you are really nailing this, Phil. You are throwing down the gauntlet to all other locked-on hosts here. All right, so now we've got the Clippers or the 8 rebounds per game.
Give me the for the 8 rebounds per game. Ooh, I don't know if he.
This is tough because there's only I'll tell you now. There's only 12 players in Magic history who have had 8 rebound per game seasons.
I'm not sure if the obscure player I'm thinking of hit that mark.
Yeah, it's the one Kane got wrong yesterday. Just trying to hit that 8 is really tough.
I'm gonna go for it.
Okay, let's go.
I'm gonna go for it. Legendary member of the Hard and Hustle team, Chris Scatling.
Oh no, Phil. That is not correct. He did not hit 8 rebounds per game. Well, we've got 1 to go. Let's finish it off strong with the Clippers.
Okay, strong with the Clippers. He played the guy I'm thinking of played too many games with. He only played 1 game with Orlando, 1 season with Orlando. I got to get low. This is gonna kill my score because I know he played a lot for the Clippers. I know he played at least 1 full season with Orlando.
Okay.
I'm gonna go. This is bad radio. So give me Stanley Roberts for my Clippers square.
Stanley Roberts. All right. Now, where is he even? Is he on this list? Stanley
better be.
Roberts.
Don't make me look him up.
Oh no, there he is now. I thought we were going to miss him. No, he is there, and it's not actually that bad of a score. Stanley Roberts gives you a 19.35.
Okay.
He played 160 games for the Clippers and 55 for the Magic, so not a bad score there. And that, I think, where will that bring you in relation to Kano? You come in under. You're at 172 as a total number there. So you are the leader in the clubhouse.
But I have an empty square. So someone will fill the whole grid and beat me.
They will. Phil, well done. Thank you. Tell us what's happening over at Locked On Magic at the moment.
Yeah, right now we are kind of getting all into FIBA. We're in our FIBA era right now, so we are chatting all about the 5 players the Orlando Magic have playing in FIBA basketball. That would be Paolo Banchero for the U.S., Mo and Franz Wagner for Germany, Joe Ingles for Australia, and the legendary Goga Bitadze playing for the Republic of Georgia. And so we will be talking all about basketball, getting ourselves ready for the season. I'm going through kind of areas where several Magic players need to continue improving and kind of setting the table for what we all believe will be a really fun and exciting season. But don't let all this talk of doom and gloom and questions make you think that this team isn't going to be fun. They're going to be your league pass team because they probably won't be on national TV very much.
No, they're going to be fun. They were fun at times last year as well, and I think they're going to be even better this year, Phil. Thank you for coming on and chatting about the Orlando Magic with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on as always, Josh.
And that will do it for me today. Don't forget, follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. And if you are here on YouTube, thumb it up and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.